Coffee service? Guess combat pay wasn't enough, huh? The laughter rolled through the war room like thunder. 15 officers in dress blues finding humor in cruelty before the morning briefing had even started. Commander Ryan Locke leaned back in his chair at the head of the conference table, arms crossed, a smirk carved into his face as if he'd just delivered the punchline of the year. The other SEAL officers followed his lead, chuckling and exchanging glances, the kind of casual mockery that comes easy when you believe you're untouchable. The woman carrying the coffee tray didn't flinch. She wore a plain Navy utility uniform with a temporary worker badge clipped to her chest. No rank, no insignia, no identity beyond service personnel. Her dark hair was pulled back in a tight bun, her posture straight but unremarkable, the kind of person you'd glance past in a hallway and forget within seconds. She moved between the chairs with measured steps, setting down ceramic mugs in front of each officer with mechanical precision. But Master Chief Dennis Wade wasn't laughing. The 55-year-old SEAL veteran sat near the back of the room, his weathered face unreadable as he watched the woman approach his seat. Something about her movement pattern bothered him, not in a threatening way, but in a way that tickled the edges of recognition. When she placed the mug in front of him, he noticed her grip. 3 fingers supporting the base, thumb and index controlling the handle, weight distribution centered. That wasn't hospitality training. That was tactical carry discipline. She moved to the next officer without making eye contact, her breathing controlled and rhythmic. Wade counted silently. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out, combat breathing. The kind of respiratory pattern you drilled into muscle memory during high-stress training until it became as automatic as a heartbeat. His eyes narrowed slightly as she turned to refill the carafe at the side table, and that's when he saw it. A flash of scarred tissue on her right wrist as her sleeve pulled back during the pour. Not a kitchen burn, not an accident. The marking looked deliberate, controlled. The letter O and the number 7, raised and pale against tanned skin. Ryan's voice cut through Wade's observation. Maybe when you're done playing waitress, you can clean up after real operators. More laughter rippled around the table. The woman's jaw tightened for half a heartbeat, so brief that most wouldn't have caught it, then relaxed. She finished pouring and stepped back against the wall near the projector station, hands clasped behind her back in a rest position that looked almost military. Admiral Nathan Greer entered through the secure door at exactly 0800 hours. Every officer stood immediately, chairs scraping against the polished floor. The Admiral was 58, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that didn't need volume to command attention. He carried a sealed folder marked with red classification bands and set it down at the head of the table without ceremony. His eyes swept the room once, pausing imperceptibly on the woman by the wall, then settling on Ryan. Seats, gentlemen. Greer's voice carried the flat authority of someone who'd spent 3 decades making decisions that didn't allow for second-guessing. The officers sat. The Admiral remained standing. Operation Seabird. We're here to finalize pursuit protocols for the Yemen cell responsible for the ambush 3 years ago. Intel suggests they've reorganized in the Horn of Africa. He opened the folder and pulled out a single photograph, sliding it across the table toward Ryan. Your team lost 4 men in that firefight. This briefing determines how we respond. Ryan picked up the photo, a satellite image of a compound in Djibouti marked with targeting coordinates. His expression hardened into something between determination and old anger. We've waited 3 years for actionable intelligence, sir. My men deserve justice. Greer nodded slowly. Justice. That's the word we'll be using today. He gestured to the woman near the wall without looking at her. More coffee. It wasn't a request. She moved forward again with that same controlled stride, lifting the carafe. As she poured into Greer's mug, Wade noticed she didn't ask how much. She filled it to precisely 1 inch from the rim, Navy standard for hot beverages during briefings to prevent spills during turbulence or sudden movement. Another small detail, another piece that didn't fit the temporary worker narrative. The briefing began in earnest. Greer activated the wall-mounted screen, and a tactical map of East Africa materialized in high resolution. Red markers indicated known insurgent activity. Blue dots showed Allied force positions. A yellow triangle blinked over the Djibouti compound. This is Target Osprey. Signals Intelligence confirms the cell leader, callsign Wraith, operates from this location. He's the one who received advanced coordinates of your team's position during the Yemen operation. Ryan leaned forward, fingers drumming on the table. How did he get those coordinates, sir? That mission was compartmentalized. We had operational security at every level. The Admiral's expression didn't change. That's the question we've been asking for 3 years, Commander. He clicked to the next slide, a communications log with timestamps and encrypted channel markers. The breach originated from within our network. Someone with access to mission planning fed real-time position data to hostile forces. If you think a servant has no power, you've never seen justice served cold. Hit that like button. This story is about to turn ice cold. The room went still. Ryan's drumming fingers stopped. Lieutenant Marcus Chen, sitting to Ryan's right, broke the silence. "Sir, are you saying we had a traitor, someone in the chain of command?" Greer's jaw tightened. "I'm saying we had a leak. Whether intentional or compromised, we don't know. What we do know is that 4 men died because someone opened a secure channel 30 minutes before contact." He advanced to another slide, a personnel roster with several names redacted in black bars. This list represents everyone with access to those coordinates. Most have been cleared through exhaustive investigation. Ryan straightened in his chair, his voice taking on an edge. "Most? Sir, with respect, we can't move on Osprey if there's still a security risk. If someone on that list is dirty, they could compromise the next operation just like they did in Yemen." The woman refilling water glasses near the back wall paused for a fraction of a second. Wade caught it. The Admiral caught it. Ryan didn't. Greer closed the folder with deliberate slowness. Which brings us to the second purpose of this briefing. We're not just planning an operation. We're closing a case. He looked directly at Ryan now, and something shifted in the temperature of the room. "Tell me, Commander, what do you remember about Chief Warrant Officer Elise Morgan?" Ryan blinked, thrown by the sudden change in direction. "Morgan? She was on my team in Yemen, KIA during the ambush." His voice hardened. "She was also flagged in the investigation as a potential security risk. The initial breach analysis suggested her communications device might have been compromised." Lieutenant Chen nodded. "I remember the briefing. Morgan was posthumously listed as killed in action, suspected betrayal. Not exactly the legacy anyone wants." Ryan's hands clenched on the table. "We lost good men because of her. Elise Morgan should have never worn the trident. I don't care if she's dead. Her name is a stain on this unit." The woman near the wall had gone completely motionless. Her breathing remained controlled. 4 count in, 4 count hold, 4 count out. But Wade saw the microscopic shift in her posture, weight redistributing, shoulders squaring, the stillness before action. He'd seen that stance 1,000 times in combat zones the moment before someone decided whether to engage or extract. She chose neither. She simply stood, hands clasped behind her back, expressionless as marble. Greer let the silence stretch for 5 seconds. 10. 15. When he spoke again, his tone had dropped to something colder. "Interesting assessment, Commander. Tell me, if Morgan was compromised, why would the breach analysis show the unauthorized access originated from a command-level terminal, not a field operator's device?" Ryan's face flushed. "Sir, I'm not privy to the full forensics report. I only know what the initial briefing stated." The initial briefing was incomplete. Greer pulled a second folder from his case, this one marked with orange stripes, Special Access Program Classification. "The full investigation took 3 years because we weren't just hunting insurgents. We were hunting the source of the leak." He opened the folder and extracted a single sheet of paper, placing it face down on the table. "Before we proceed with Osprey, I need to address this directly, because if we're sending men into the field, I need to know the chain of command is clean." Wade's pulse quickened. He'd been in enough classified briefings to recognize when the room was about to detonate. The Admiral wasn't building to a revelation. He was preparing for a controlled detonation. And judging by the way Greer kept glancing at the woman near the wall, she was connected to whatever was coming. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I don't understand. Are you saying the investigation found something new?" "I'm saying the investigation never stopped." Greer flipped the paper over. It was a communication log, time-stamped 3 years prior, 02:30 hours. 30 minutes before the Yemen ambush. A single line was highlighted in yellow. Position update transmitted via secure channel, authorization code LCK031. The color drained from Ryan's face. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to the paper, then to Greer, then to the other officers around the table, looking for an anchor point that wasn't there. That's not... LCK031 is your personal access code, Commander." Greer's voice cut through the stammering like a blade. "It's tied to your biometric authorization. No one else can use it." Ryan stood abruptly, chair scraping backward. Admiral, I never transmitted any position data. My terminal wasn't even active that night. This is a mistake. Someone must have cloned my credentials. We considered that possibility. Greer's tone remained flat, factual. Forensics traced the transmission to your assigned workstation in the Norfolk TOC. Video surveillance shows you logged in at 02:15 hours. You remained at the terminal for 20 minutes. The transmission occurred at 02:30. You logged out at 02:35. Lieutenant Chen leaned back in his chair, eyes wide. Holy cow! Ryan's breathing quickened. I was filing routine status reports. I didn't send anything to external networks. This is someone setting me up, someone with access to surveillance, to logs. His eyes snapped to the woman near the wall, still standing motionless. Her. She's the only one here who wasn't cleared. She could have planted this. Every head in the room turned toward her. She didn't react, didn't defend herself, didn't speak. She just stood there, hands still clasped behind her back, expression unreadable. Wade watched her breathing pattern, still controlled, still 4 count, no panic, no fear. That bothered him more than anything else. Greer's voice hardened. Commander Locke, that woman has higher security clearance than anyone in this room except me. Ryan's laugh came out strangled. She's a temp worker. Her badge says service personnel. She doesn't even have a rank designation. Her badge says what I told it to say. Greer turned slightly, his gaze settling on the woman. Because 3 years ago when the ambush happened, I made a decision. I declared one of my best operators killed in action and erased her from every accessible record. I did it to protect an ongoing investigation. I did it because I needed someone who could move through military installations without drawing attention. Someone who could observe, collect intelligence, and remain invisible while we traced the betrayal back to its source. The room had gone so quiet that Wade could hear the ventilation system humming in the ceiling. Ryan's face cycled through confusion, denial, and dawning horror in the span of 3 seconds. Sir, what are you saying? Admiral Greer's expression didn't change. I'm saying Elise Morgan didn't die in Yemen. She survived the ambush you sent her into, and for the past 3 years she's been hunting the person who sold her team's coordinates. The woman near the wall moved for the first time since the briefing began. She stepped forward into the light pooling from the overhead fixtures, and Wade finally got a clear look at her face. Not young, early 30s maybe, not old, but her eyes carried the kind of weight that came from seeing things you couldn't unsee. She didn't speak. She just reached up with steady hands and unclipped the temporary worker badge from her chest. Beneath it, previously hidden by the badge's placement, was a small metal insignia pinned directly to her uniform. Wade's breath caught. He recognized that insignia. He'd worn one just like it 20 years ago. Trident and anchor, eagle and pistol, the SEAL warfare badge. But there was something else. A subdued unit patch beneath it, barely visible in the fluorescent light. DevGru Unit 7, Naval Special Warfare Development Group, the unit that didn't officially exist. Ryan staggered backward, gripping the edge of the table. That's impossible. She died. I saw the casualty report. I attended the memorial service. You attended a lie. The woman spoke for the first time, and her voice was steady, quiet, deliberate. No anger, no triumph, just statement of fact. A necessary lie, because the only way to find a traitor is to make them believe they've won. Wade stood slowly, his chair scraping in the silence. His eyes locked on the scar tissue he'd noticed earlier, the O and the 7 on her wrist. Operator 7. Unit designation for field operatives working black programs under executive authority. He'd heard rumors about 07 personnel, ghosts who moved through theaters without leaving traces, operators who didn't exist on any roster but could access any facility, any network, any command structure. He'd always thought they were myth. Apparently not. Ryan's voice cracked. You've been here? On this base? For how long? 3 months. Elise's gaze remained level, fixed on Ryan with the kind of focus that came from patience, not rage. Long enough to observe, long enough to confirm what the forensics already suggested. Lieutenant Chen found his voice, barely above a whisper. Confirm what? Admiral Greer pulled another document from the orange-striped folder and slid it across the table. This one was a bank statement, flagged with highlighter on multiple transactions. Commander Locke, Would you care to explain why your personal account received 3 wire transfers totaling $80,000 from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands? Transfers that occurred in the 48 hours following the Yemen ambush? Ryan's knees buckled. He caught himself on the table, knuckles white. I didn't. The offshore account is registered to a shell corporation traced back to the same financial network that funds Wraith's cell. Greer's tone could have frozen nitrogen. You sold your team's coordinates for $80,000. 4 men died. And when Chief Warrant Officer Morgan survived and started asking questions, you flagged her as a security risk to cover your tracks. No. Ryan's voice broke completely now, desperation bleeding through. No, you don't understand. I had debts, gambling debts. They were going to my family, your family. Elise's repetition of the word carried no inflection, but somehow it landed heavier than a shout. 4 families buried empty caskets because you needed money. My team died because you needed money. Wade felt the room's attention shift like a physical weight. Every officer present was staring at Ryan now, and the collective silence carried more condemnation than any words could. This wasn't a trial. This was a reckoning. Ryan straightened, his face contorting into something between defiance and panic. He pointed at Elise with a shaking hand. You're lying. You're a ghost story, a setup. The Admiral's using you to frame me because the real investigation hit a dead end. Frame you? Elise tilted her head slightly, the first sign of emotion crossing her face, something cold and clinical. Commander, I've spent 3 years collecting evidence. Every communication you had with the offshore handlers, every login to the secure network, every financial transaction. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small black device about the size of a thumb drive. This contains mission logs, surveillance footage, signal intercepts, and financial forensics. 3 years of work, all of it pointing to you. Ryan's eyes locked on the device, and something in him snapped. His hand moved toward his sidearm, standard issue Sig Sauer holstered at his hip. But before his fingers even touched the grip, Admiral Greer's voice cut through the air like a whip crack. Commander Locke, if you draw that weapon, you will be shot before it clears the holster. Stand down. 2 security personnel had materialized at the door. Wade hadn't even heard them enter. Both had their hands resting on their own sidearms, stance wide, ready. Ryan's hand froze. His chest heaved with rapid, shallow breaths. The math was simple. He was outgunned, outnumbered, and out of options. But Elise hadn't moved. She stood in the same spot, relaxed, the small device still held loosely in her palm. No weapon drawn, no defensive posture, just calm. Wade realized with a start that she'd never been worried. Not once. She'd walked into this room knowing exactly how it would unfold, and nothing Ryan could do would surprise her. Greer's voice softened by a single degree, from steel to stone. Security is outside this room, Commander. So is a forensics team. So is a JAG representative. When you walk out that door, you'll be placed under arrest pending court-martial. The charges are treason, conspiracy, and 4 counts of negligent homicide. If you cooperate, the Navy will consider your financial circumstances as mitigating factors. If you resist, we'll pursue the maximum penalty under UCMJ. Ryan's hand dropped away from his sidearm. His shoulders sagged. For a moment, he looked like he might collapse entirely. Then his eyes found Elise again, and something ugly twisted in his expression. You self-righteous? Do you have any idea what you've done? You think you're the hero here? You destroyed my career, my life. Over what? Some principle? Elise's response was quiet, measured, and absolute. I destroyed nothing, Commander. You did that the moment you sold your team. I just made sure everyone knew. Wait, why is the Admiral protecting a coffee server? Drop your theory in the comments. And subscribe, because the answer will blow your mind. Lieutenant Chen cleared his throat, breaking the suffocating tension. Sir, permission to speak? Greer nodded. Go ahead, Lieutenant. Why now? If you've had evidence for 3 years, why wait until this briefing to make the arrest? It was Elise who answered, still looking at Ryan. Because we needed to be sure there was only one traitor. If I'd come forward earlier, anyone else involved could have gone underground. But by staying hidden, I forced the network to continue operating. Every contact, every communication, every transaction. We mapped the entire chain. She finally looked away from Ryan, turning to address the room. Commander Locke acted alone. No accomplices, no secondary conspirators. The investigation is closed. Wade found himself speaking before he'd consciously decided to. Chief Morgan. His voice came out rougher than intended. Decades of smoke and sea salt. That scar on your wrist. '07 designation. How long have you been running black operations? Elise's eyes found his. The first time she'd made direct eye contact with anyone besides Ryan or Greer. Since I graduated BUDS, Master Chief. 12 years. 12 years? Wade let that sink in. And you've been living under false identity for the last 3? Not false. Suspended, she corrected gently. My records were sealed, not erased. I still drew pay. I still had chain of command. I just didn't officially exist where anyone could find me. Another officer near the back, Lieutenant Jackson, raised his hand tentatively. Ma'am, if you were running an undercover investigation, why take a job serving coffee? Seems like there'd be easier ways to gather intelligence. A flicker of something that might have been amusement crossed Elise's face. Because nobody pays attention to service personnel. You walk into a room, you see rank and position. You don't see the person pouring your coffee, you talk freely. You leave documents on tables, you discuss classified operations like, I'm not even there, she gestured toward Ryan. I've been in 7 briefings with the commander over the past 2 months. He never recognized me, not once. Ryan's face had gone gray. You were in my briefings? Every single one. Elise's tone remained clinical. You discussed Operation Seabird in detail. You talked about force deployment, targeting protocols, even contingency plans. All of it would have been useful intelligence for Wraith's cell if you'd still been in contact with them. But you weren't. You'd gone silent after receiving final payment. That's how I knew you were the endpoint, not a relay. Wade's mind raced, piecing together implications. You weren't just investigating the leak. You were protecting the next operation. Exactly. Greer reclaimed control of the briefing, his voice carrying command authority again. If Locke had still been active with the enemy network, his arrest would have tipped our hand. But Chief Morgan confirmed he'd ceased contact after the initial transaction. He took the money, flagged Morgan as a scapegoat, and tried to move on. That made it safe to proceed with Osprey. Ryan's laugh came out bitter and broken. So this whole briefing was a setup. You weren't planning an operation. You were setting a trap. We're doing both. Greer's correction was ice cold. Operation Osprey launches in 72 hours. Your arrest doesn't change that. It just means you won't be part of it. The security personnel stepped forward, positioning themselves on either side of Ryan. One of them spoke in a low, professional monotone. Commander Locke, please place your hands behind your back. Ryan didn't resist. He stood there, swaying slightly as they secured restraints on his wrists, but his eyes never left Elise. You know what the worst part is? His voice had gone hollow. You're right. I did this. All of it. And I can't even claim I didn't know better. I thought I could get away with it. Elise met his gaze without blinking. You did get away with it. For 3 years. That's longer than most traitors last. Cold comfort. Ryan's smile was a death mask. I hope it was worth it, living like a ghost. Pretending to be someone you're not. Was it worth 3 years of your life? For the first time since entering, Elise's expression shifted into something that might have been satisfaction. Commander, I wore their contempt like armor. I kept quiet so the wrong man would speak. And now justice doesn't need me to raise my voice. The evidence speaks for itself. So yes, it was worth every single day. Security began escorting Ryan toward the door. He moved like a man walking to execution, each step mechanical and defeated. Just before crossing the threshold, he stopped and looked back one final time. Not at Elise, at Admiral Greer. Sir, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am. Greer's face could have been carved from stone. Commander, your apology is noted for the record. It will make no difference to your sentencing. Ryan nodded, then disappeared through the door. The sound of it closing echoed like a gunshot. The room exhaled collectively, 15 officers releasing breath they hadn't realized they'd been holding. Wade sank back into his chair, feeling suddenly exhausted despite the morning hour. His eyes found Elise again, still standing near the projection screen, still composed. Lieutenant Chen broke the silence. Ma'am, if I may ask, what happens now, with you, I mean? Do you go back to being Elise Morgan officially? That depends. Elise looked to Admiral Greer, a silent question passing between them. Greer considered for a moment, then nodded. Chief Morgan's current operation is concluded. Her records will be unsealed and restored to active status within 48 hours. She'll resume duties appropriate to her rank and clearance level. He paused, something almost resembling warmth entering his tone. Though I suspect she'll prefer assignments where coffee service isn't required. That drew a ripple of nervous laughter from the officers, tension breaking like a dam releasing pressure. Elise allowed herself a small smile, the first genuine expression Wade had seen from her all morning. Appreciated, sir. Admiral Greer straightened, reasserting formal command presence. Gentlemen, what you witnessed here today is classified at the highest level. No discussion outside secure spaces, no mention in personal communications. As far as the Navy is concerned, this briefing covered only Operation Osprey tactical planning. Chief Morgan's investigation and Commander Locke's arrest are sealed under special access protocol. Clear? A chorus of, "Yes, sir," answered him. But Wade noticed something. The way officers were looking at Elise had shifted. Before, she'd been invisible, wallpaper with a coffee pot. Now they saw her, really saw her, and in their eyes was something between respect and unease. She'd proven that anyone could be watching, anyone could be listening. The comfortable assumption of privacy in their own spaces had been shattered. Greer checked his watch. We'll reconvene in 2 hours for the actual Osprey briefing. Dismissed. Chairs scraped. Officers stood, gathering folders and tablets. But nobody moved toward the door immediately. They lingered, stealing glances at Elise, clearly wanting to say something but unsure what. It was Lieutenant Chen who finally approached her, stopping at a respectful distance. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, what you did took incredible discipline. I don't think I could have stayed quiet for 3 years while people mocked me." Elise's smile was tired but genuine. "Lieutenant, strength isn't noise. It's discipline when no one is clapping. You'd be surprised what you can endure when you know the truth is on your side." Chen nodded slowly, processing that. Then he straightened and rendered a crisp salute. Elise returned it with equal precision. One by one, the other officers followed suit, each stopping, saluting, acknowledging what she'd done. Wade watched the procession with something tight in his chest. This wasn't ceremony. This was apology. Every man in this room had laughed at her, dismissed her, ignored her. And now they were confronting that complicity. When the last officer had filed out, only Wade, Greer, and Elise remained. Wade stood slowly, his knees protesting years of hard parachute landings and cold water insertions. He approached Elise with measured steps, stopping when he was close enough to see the faint scarring on her wrist clearly. The 07 marking. Ghost operator designation. He'd heard the legends. Now he was standing in front of one. "Chief Morgan," his voice came out gravelly. "Earlier, when you were pouring coffee, I recognized your grip, your breathing pattern. I almost said something." Elise's eyes met his, and he saw exhaustion there beneath the calm. "I know, Master Chief. I saw you watching. I figured you'd either speak up or stay quiet." "Why didn't you worry I'd expose you?" "Because you're a professional. You saw something that didn't fit, and you waited to see how it played out. That's good instinct." She glanced down at her wrist, touching the scarred tissue absently. "Not many people notice 07 markers. You served with the program?" Wade shook his head. "Adjacent to it. 20 years ago, I worked logistics for a black site operation in Kandahar. Never knew the operators' real names. Just saw the marking a few times." He paused. "Never expected to see it again." "Most people don't." Elise's tone softened slightly. "We're designed to be forgotten." Admiral Greer, who'd been organizing papers at the head of the table, looked up. "Master Chief Wade, I'm assigning you as senior advisor to Operation Osprey. Your experience with Chief Morgan's operational style will be valuable." Wade blinked, surprised. "Sir, I wasn't aware I'd be involved in Osprey." "You are now. Consider this your official briefing notification." Greer's expression remained neutral, but Wade caught the subtext. The Admiral wanted someone in the operation who understood what Elise had gone through, someone who'd already proven discretion. Wade understood immediately. "Aye, sir, I'd be honored." Greer nodded, then turned to Elise. "Chief, you have 48 hours of mandatory stand-down. Psychological eval, medical clearance, and administrative processing. After that, we'll discuss your next assignment." "Understood, sir." Elise straightened. though Wade could see the exhaustion starting to show around her eyes now that the immediate crisis had passed. 3 years was a long time to maintain cover. 3 years of being invisible. 3 years of enduring disrespect and mockery while holding absolute proof of betrayal. The weight of that was starting to show. Greer's voice softened, just barely. For what it's worth, Chief, you conducted yourself with exceptional professionalism. The Navy owes you a debt. Elise's response was quiet. The Navy doesn't owe me anything, sir. I did my job. That's all. That's more than most could have done. Greer collected his folders and moved toward the door. Master Chief, see that Chief Morgan gets to medical processing. She's officially on administrative leave until further notice. Aye, sir. The Admiral left, the secure door hissing shut behind him. Wade and Elise stood in the empty war room, fluorescent lights humming overhead, the lingering smell of coffee and tension thick in the air. After a moment, Wade gestured toward the chairs. Mind if we sit for a minute? These old knees aren't what they used to be. Elise nodded, grateful. They both sank into chairs, her in the seat Ryan had occupied an hour ago, Wade across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. Just two operators who'd seen too much, sitting in silence that felt more comfortable than conversation. Finally, Wade broke it. 3 years, living invisible. That's its own kind of combat. Elise's smile was tired. Different rules, same discipline. You ever come close to breaking cover? Twice. She leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Once when Commander Locke hosted a memorial service for the Yemen team. He gave this speech about honor and sacrifice. I had to stand in the back of the room holding a tray of glasses, listening to him eulogize men he'd killed. That was hard. Wade winced. And the second time? Last month. Lieutenant Chen's wife had a baby. He brought pictures into the briefing room. Everyone was congratulating him, passing around photos. And Ryan made this joke about how Chen better get used to sleepless nights because fatherhood was harder than buds. Elise's jaw tightened. One of the men who died in Yemen, Petty Officer Davis, his wife was pregnant when he deployed. I knew that. Ryan knew that. But he made the joke anyway, like Davis had never existed. And you kept quiet. I kept quiet. Elise's eyes refocused on Wade. Because exposing myself in that moment would have been about my anger, not about justice. And I couldn't let anger drive this. It had to be clean. It had to be airtight. Otherwise, Ryan could have claimed procedural errors, contaminated evidence, personal vendetta. I had to wait until the evidence was irrefutable. Wade nodded slowly. You gave up 3 years of your life to make sure 4 men got justice. That's not just discipline, Chief. That's sacrifice. Elise was quiet for a moment, then shook her head. Master Chief, I didn't give up 3 years. I spent 3 years. There's a difference. Giving up implies loss. I spent that time making sure my team didn't die for nothing. That's not sacrifice. That's responsibility. Wade studied her face, the lines around her eyes, the set of her jaw, the way she held herself even in exhaustion. She meant every word. This wasn't false modesty or self-deprecation. This was someone who'd made a choice and owned it completely, without need for validation or recognition. That kind of integrity was rare. Wade had seen a lot of operators in his career. Most were good, some were great, a handful were legends. Elise Morgan, he suspected, was the kind of operator people would tell stories about in 20 years, if they ever learned her story. Well, Wade said finally, pushing himself to his feet, responsibility or sacrifice, you earned a break. Let me walk you to medical. Fair warning, they're going to ask you 1,000 questions about your mental state. Elise stood as well, stretching slightly. I've been through psych evals before. I'll manage. They headed toward the door together. Wade punched in his access code and the secure lock disengaged with a mechanical click. As they stepped into the corridor beyond, Wade glanced at her sidelong. Question. When you were serving coffee this morning, did you know Ryan was going to break? That he'd try to draw his weapon? Elise's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Master Chief, I knew exactly how Commander Locke would react. I've spent 3 years studying him. I know his patterns, his stress responses, his breaking points. When Admiral Greer presented the evidence, there were only 3 possible outcomes. Ryan could confess, which was unlikely. He could lawyer up and stay silent, which was possible. Or he could panic and escalate, which was probable. I prepared for all three. And if he'd actually drawn his weapon? If security hadn't been fast enough? Elise's smile was thin and cold. Then I would have handled it. Wade believed her. He'd seen the way she stood during the confrontation. Relaxed but ready. No wasted tension, no fear. She'd been prepared to respond if necessary, but she hadn't needed to. That level of confidence came from training so deep it became instinct. They walked in silence down the corridor, past administrative offices and secured storage rooms. Personnel they passed offered Wade casual nods or salutes, but their eyes lingered on Elise. News traveled fast on military bases, even classified news. By tomorrow, everyone would know something had happened in the war room, even if they didn't know details. Rumors would spread, stories would morph, but the truth would remain sealed. As they approached the medical wing, Wade slowed. "Chief, one more question. What happens next for you? Once you're cleared and back on active status?" Elise considered that for a moment, her gaze distant. "Honestly, I don't know. I've spent 3 years focused on one objective. Now that it's done, I'm not sure what comes after." "You thought about going back to regular SEAL operations?" "Maybe. Or maybe something else. Admiral Greer mentioned assignments appropriate to my clearance level. That could mean a lot of things." She paused at the entrance to medical. "Right now, I'm just trying to remember what normal feels like." Wade extended his hand. "For what it's worth, Chief, normal is overrated. You did something extraordinary. Don't be in a rush to be ordinary." Elise shook his hand, her grip firm and sure. "Thanks, Master Chief. That means something." "Wade. Just Wade when we're not in formation." "Elise. Just Elise when we're not in formation." They exchanged tired smiles, two professionals who'd survived different kinds of battles but understood the cost equally. Then Elise turned and pushed through the medical wing doors, disappearing into the fluorescent-lit waiting area beyond. Wade stood there for a moment, thinking about 3 years of silence. 3 years of contempt absorbed like armor. 3 years of invisible work leading to 1 hour of visible justice. He shook his head slowly, a wry smile tugging at his mouth. Then he turned and headed back toward the administrative offices. He had reports to file, an operation to prepare for, and a newfound respect for the person who'd been pouring his coffee for the past 3 months. Justice wasn't loud, it was patient. And sometimes it wore a service uniform and waited for the exact right moment to remind everyone that underestimation was a fatal mistake. 48 hours changed everything. The administrative processing that followed Commander Ryan Locke's arrest moved with the kind of institutional efficiency that only activated when the Navy wanted something done quietly and thoroughly. By the time Elise completed her psychological evaluation and medical clearance, 3 separate investigations had already been launched. Internal Affairs, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and a Special Judge Advocate General Task Force assigned exclusively to treason cases. Ryan was being held in the brig at Naval Station Norfolk under 24-hour watch, stripped of his rank insignia and confined to a 6x8 cell with no windows. His arraignment was scheduled for Monday morning. His career was over. His freedom was measured in hours, not years. But the consequences didn't stop with one man. Elise stood in Admiral Greer's office on the second morning after the war room confrontation, wearing a crisp Navy working uniform, this time with her actual rank insignia restored. Chief Warrant Officer, 3 gold bars. The DevGru patch sat on her right shoulder where it belonged, no longer hidden beneath a temp worker badge. Her hair was still pulled back in the same tight bun, but everything else had shifted. She was visible now. Official. Real. Greer sat behind his desk reviewing a tablet, his expression carved from granite as always. He didn't look up when he spoke. The forensics team finished their deep dive into Locke's communications network. They found more than we expected. Elise remained at parade rest, hands clasped behind her back. "Sir?" "3 additional suspects." Greer finally looked up, his eyes sharp. All of them with access to operational planning. All of them with financial irregularities that correlate to classified mission timelines. Elise's jaw tightened. Locke wasn't working alone? Not in the traditional sense. He didn't have accomplices, he had customers. Greer turned the tablet around so she could see the screen. 3 personnel files were displayed side by side. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vance, Logistics Officer. Captain Martin Cross, Intelligence Analyst. Civilian Contractor Derek Huang, Network Security Specialist. Each of them sold information to the same offshore network that Locke used. Small pieces, fragments of intel that seemed harmless individually, but created a complete operational picture when combined. Elise stepped forward, studying the files. Vance was 42, 15 years of service, stationed at JSOC headquarters. Cross was 37, 12 years, assigned to intelligence coordination at Camp Pendleton. Huang was 51, former NSA contractor now working private security clearances. On paper, none of them should have intersected with Yemen operations, but intelligence networks were rarely linear. How did forensics connect them to Locke? Elise asked. They didn't. They connected them to the same financial network. Your 3 years of mission logs included signals intercepts from the offshore accounts, transaction patterns, routing protocols, digital fingerprints. When forensics ran those patterns against the entire Navy database, these 3 names flagged for similar activity. Greer leaned back in his chair. Locke gave them coordinates. Vance provided supply chain information that revealed force deployment schedules. Cross leaked threat assessments that confirmed target priorities. Huang sold network access credentials that allowed hostile actors to monitor our communications. Elise felt ice forming in her chest. Sir, that's not just betrayal. That's systematic intelligence compromise. If they've been operating for 3 years, 7 years. Greer's interruption was flat. Cross started selling information 7 years ago. Vance joined the network 5 years ago. Huang came aboard 4 years ago. Locke was the newest member and the sloppiest. His transaction size was too large, too concentrated. That's what made him visible. The others were smarter, smaller payments, longer intervals, harder to trace. But we trace them now, because you stayed invisible long enough for the network to keep operating. Greer stood, moving to the window that overlooked the naval yard. Ships lined the dock, gray hulls gleaming in morning sunlight. If you'd exposed Locke immediately 3 years ago, the others would have scattered. They would have erased their tracks, changed their methods, disappeared into the bureaucracy. But you waited. You collected evidence. You mapped the entire network without them knowing anyone was watching, and now we have them all. Elise processed that, the weight of 7 years settling on her shoulders. How many operations had been compromised? How many missions had failed because someone sold the intelligence first? How many service members had died because people like Vance and Cross and Huang decided money mattered more than duty? What's the operational timeline for arrests, sir? Simultaneous takedown scheduled for 0600 tomorrow. NCIS teams are already positioned near each suspect. We move at dawn. No warning, no possibility of coordination between them. Greer turned back to face her. You'll be present for Vance's arrest. I want her to see your face when it happens. Sir, I'm not sure that's an order, Chief. You spent 3 years hunting these people. You earned the right to watch them fall. Greer's voice carried finality. Besides, Vance attended the same memorial service as Locke. She gave a speech about honoring the fallen. You should be there when she learns the fallen didn't stay fallen. Elise understood. This wasn't about revenge. This was about accountability. About making sure the people who'd profited from betrayal understood that invisibility worked both ways. And sometimes, the person you didn't see was the one who'd been watching all along. Aye, sir. I'll be ready. Greer returned to his desk, pulling out a manila folder marked with her name. Before tomorrow's operation, there's another matter. The SEAL community has requested a formal acknowledgement ceremony. Master Chief Wade organized it. They want to recognize your 3 years of service under classified conditions. Elise blinked, surprised. Sir, that's not necessary. I was doing my job. The community disagrees, and frankly, Chief, so do I. Greer opened the folder, revealing a commendation certificate signed by multiple commanding officers. You conducted one of the longest undercover operations in naval special warfare history. You maintained operational security under extreme psychological pressure. You identified and neutralized a spy network that had been active for 7 years. That's not just doing your job, that's exceeding every standard we have. When is the ceremony? 1400 hours today. Hangar 7. Attendance is restricted to SEAL qualified personnel and command staff. No media, no public record. But the people who matter will know what you did. Greer held her gaze. And Chief, this time, you don't have to stay invisible. Hangar 7 smelled like hydraulic fluid, old metal, and decades of naval aviation history. The space was massive, designed to house fighter jets during maintenance, but today it held only people. Approximately 60 personnel stood in formation, most of them wearing the desert tan uniform of Naval Special Warfare Operators, SEALs, combat veterans. The kind of men who didn't give respect easily, and didn't tolerate weakness in any form. Elise entered through the side door with Admiral Greer, and the formation immediately snapped to attention. Every operator stood rigid, eyes forward, hands at their sides in perfect military bearing. Master Chief Wade stood at the front of the formation, his weathered face serious but carrying a hint of pride that hadn't been there 2 days ago. A small podium had been set up near the front, flanked by American and Navy flags. No decorations, no ceremony beyond what was necessary. This was a military acknowledgement, not a celebration. The difference mattered. Admiral Greer approached the podium while Elise positioned herself to the side, feeling suddenly exposed under the collective attention of 60 operators who now knew exactly who she was and what she'd done. Some of these men had been in the war room during the briefing. Others had heard the story secondhand, but all of them were looking at her differently than they had 72 hours ago. Greer's voice carried across the hangar without need for amplification. At ease. The formation relaxed fractionally, shifting into parade rest. We're here today to acknowledge something that can't be fully discussed outside this hangar. 3 years ago, following the Yemen ambush that killed 4 SEAL operators, I made a decision that violated conventional protocols. I declared one of my best operators killed in action when she was, in fact, alive. I did this to facilitate a classified investigation into the source of the intelligence breach that caused the ambush. He paused, letting that sink in. Several operators exchanged glances. Most had heard rumors, but hearing it stated officially was different. Chief Warrant Officer Elise Morgan spent the next 3 years operating under false identity within multiple military installations. She gathered intelligence, documented evidence, and ultimately identified not 1 but 4 individuals who sold classified information to hostile networks. Her work directly resulted in the arrest of Commander Ryan Locke and will result in 3 additional arrests within the next 24 hours. Wade's expression tightened at the mention of additional arrests. That information was clearly news to most of the formation. Murmurs rippled through the assembled operators before discipline reasserted and silence returned. Greer continued. Chief Morgan's operation required her to endure mockery, disrespect, and systematic dismissal while maintaining complete operational security. She did this without support, without recognition, and without the acknowledgement that typically sustains operators during difficult assignments. She did it because 4 men died, and she refused to let their deaths be meaningless. The Admiral's voice hardened. Some of you were in the war room when Commander Locke was arrested. Some of you laughed when he mocked her. Some of you ignored her completely. None of you knew you were standing in the presence of one of the most dedicated operators this community has ever produced. That's not a criticism. That's a testament to Chief Morgan's skill. She was invisible because she chose to be. And in being invisible, she accomplished what months of conventional investigation could not. Greer turned to face Elise directly. Chief Morgan, front and center. Elise stepped forward, moving to stand before the Admiral at parade rest. Greer held a small wooden case that he opened to reveal a medal, the Navy Cross, second only to the Medal of Honor in recognition of valor, but he didn't remove it immediately. Instead, he looked at her with something almost resembling warmth. This medal is classified. It won't appear in your official record. Your name won't be listed in any public database. The citation will remain sealed for at least 20 years, but everyone in this hangar will know, and they'll remember. He removed the medal and pinned it to her uniform with precise movements. The weight of it settled against her chest, small, metal, significant. Then he stepped back and rendered a salute that Elise returned with equal crispness. The formation erupted. Not in applause, that would have been inappropriate, but in a synchronized movement as every operator present rendered their own salute. 60 men acknowledging one woman who'd done what most of them couldn't imagine doing. The silence was louder than any cheering could have been. This is what real justice looks like. Share this story, and hit that thanks button to support more content that honors those who serve in silence. Wade approached after the formation was dismissed, his craggy face split by a rare smile. Chief, that was long overdue. Elise touched the medal on her chest, still processing. I didn't do this for recognition, Master Chief. I know. That's why you earned it. Wade gestured toward the assembling crowd of operators who were clearly waiting to speak with her. Fair warning, you're about to get a lot of apologies. Most of these men feel pretty terrible about how they treated you over the past few months. They didn't know. That's what they'll say. But between you and me, some of them should have known better, should have looked closer, should have questioned why a temp worker had military muscle memory and combat breathing discipline. Wade's tone carried gentle reproach. You revealed our blindness, Chief, and that's uncomfortable, but necessary. Lieutenant Chen was the first to approach, his young face earnest and apologetic. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I was in 3 briefings where you served coffee, and I never once considered that you might be more than you appeared. That's on me. Elise met his eyes steadily. Lieutenant, you weren't my enemy. Our blindness was. We're trained to identify external threats, not to question the people inside our own spaces. That's a systemic vulnerability, not a personal failure. Still, I should have been better. Then be better going forward. Question assumptions. Look closer. That's how we honor the lesson. She extended her hand, and Chen shook it with obvious relief that she wasn't holding a grudge. Others followed, a procession of operators offering handshakes, salutes, and quiet words of respect. Some were awkward, some were brief, but all of them carried the same undercurrent. We see you now, we understand what you did, we won't forget. One operator, a senior chief named Rodriguez, stopped in front of her with unusual intensity. Ma'am, I was part of the Yemen QRF team. We extracted what was left after the ambush. I thought you were dead. I carried your gear out of the compound. His voice cracked slightly. Seeing you alive, it's like getting a piece of that day back. Elise felt her throat tighten. Senior Chief, I'm sorry you had to carry that weight. I know the cost of believing someone is gone. It was worth it. If being dead for 3 years meant catching the bastards who killed Davis and the others, that was worth it. Rodriguez saluted, holding it longer than regulation required. Thank you, ma'am. After the last operator had paid respects, Admiral Greer approached again, this time carrying a secure tablet. Chief, we need to discuss your next assignment. You have 3 options. Elise straightened, transitioning mentally from ceremony to operational planning. Sir? Option 1, return to standard SEAL operations. You'd be reassigned to a team, probably West Coast, with full operational status, no more undercover work. Option 2, instructor position at Special Warfare Training Pipeline. Your experience with long-term operational security and resistance to psychological pressure would be invaluable for training the next generation. Elise considered both options, then asked, and option 3? Greer's expression shifted into something calculating. Option 3 is why I really asked you here. The investigation into Vance, Cross, and Huang revealed something troubling. The offshore financial network they used isn't just servicing military intelligence sales. It's connected to a larger infrastructure, weapons trafficking, technology transfer, possibly even terrorist financing. Taking down 4 small-time sellers doesn't eliminate the network, it just cuts off 4 branches. You want me to go after the root. I want you to do what you do best. Disappear, infiltrate, map the network from the inside. Greer pulled up a file on the tablet. A photograph of a middle-aged man in civilian clothes standing outside what looked like a defense contractor's office. This is Malcolm Reese, CEO of Helix Solutions, a private military contractor operating in 17 countries. His company provides security services, logistics support, and consulting to both government and private clients. On paper, he's legitimate, but signals intelligence suggests Helix Solutions is the clearinghouse for the offshore network. Money flows through his accounts. Information moves through his servers. He's the hub. Elise studied the photograph. Reese looked unremarkable. Gray hair, average height, the kind of face that blended into boardrooms and cocktail parties. Exactly the kind of person who could operate in plain sight without attracting attention. What's the operational objective? Infiltrate Helix Solutions. Identify the network's full extent. Document everything. Then we dismantle it piece by piece. Greer's voice dropped. This isn't a 3-year operation, Chief. This could take 5, maybe longer. You'd be completely isolated. No contact with Naval Command except emergency extraction protocols. You'd live as someone else, work as someone else, become someone else. And if you're compromised, we can't protect you the way we could on a military base. Elise thought about 3 years of invisibility. 3 years of mockery and isolation and maintaining cover while every instinct screamed to fight back. It had been the hardest thing she'd ever done. And Greer was offering her the chance to do it again, for even longer, with even less support. She should say no. She should take option 1 or option 2, return to normal operations, rebuild her life, reconnect with the parts of herself that had gone dormant during the undercover work. That would be the smart choice, the safe choice. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Petty Officer Davis, saw the other 3 men who died in Yemen, saw the memorial service where Ryan Locke had eulogized the people he'd killed, saw Lieutenant Chen's baby photos and the casual cruelty of joking about fatherhood in front of operators who knew Davis would never meet his son. Justice wasn't a single arrest. It was a commitment to making sure the system that enabled betrayal couldn't survive. Elise opened her eyes and met Greer's gaze. "Option 3, sir. I'll take option 3. Greer nodded slowly, unsurprised. "I thought you might. We'll begin operational planning next week. You'll need new identity documents, cover background, financial history, everything required to become someone Malcolm Reese would hire." He closed the tablet. "This is your last chance to reconsider, Chief. Once you commit, there's no easy extraction. You'll be alone out there." "Sir, I've been alone for 3 years. I know how it works." "This is different. On a military base, you were surrounded by people who would have protected you if your cover broke. In the private sector, you're surrounded by people who profit from selling you out. The risk level is exponentially higher." "Understood, sir. But if we don't cut off the route, more operators will die. More missions will be compromised. More people like Locke will sell out their teams for money." Elise's voice carried quiet conviction. "I can stop that, so I will." Greer studied her for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Welcome to Operation Quiet Honor, Phase 2. Briefing materials will be delivered to your quarters tonight. Memorize everything, then destroy the documents. You ship out in 72 hours. They shook hands, not as commanding officer and subordinate, but as 2 people who understood that some battles required years of patience and the willingness to become invisible in service of a larger objective. The next morning, Elise stood outside a suburban townhouse in Virginia Beach at 05:45, waiting for the NCIS tactical team to move into position. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vance lived here with her husband and 2 teenage children, a normal American family in a normal American neighborhood. Except the mother was about to be arrested for selling classified intelligence to hostile networks for 5 years. Elise wore civilian clothes, jeans, dark jacket, no visible insignia. She wasn't part of the arrest team. She was just there to watch, to bear witness, to see the moment when another piece of the network fell. At exactly 0600, 4 NCIS agents approached the front door while 2 more covered the back exit. The lead agent knocked, firm, professional, authoritative. "Sarah Vance, this is NCIS. Open the door." 20 seconds of silence. Then the door opened, revealing a woman in her early 40s wearing a bathrobe, her hair disheveled from sleep. Sarah Vance looked confused, then concerned, then terrified in the span of 3 seconds as she registered the armed agents on her doorstep. "What's going on? Is someone hurt?" The lead agent held up credentials. "Lieutenant Commander Vance, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy, and violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You have the right to remain silent." "This is insane. There's been a mistake." Vance's voice climbed toward panic. "I haven't done anything. I'm a logistics officer. I process supply requests. That's it." "Ma'am, please turn around and place your hands behind your back." Vance complied mechanically, still protesting. "My husband, my kids, they're upstairs. They're going to wake up. They're going to see this." "Your husband will be briefed after you're secured. Your children will be placed with family services until arrangements can be made." The agent secured restraints on Vance's wrists with practiced efficiency. "You're being transported to Naval Station Norfolk for processing. Do you understand these rights as I've explained them?" "I didn't. I want a lawyer. I want to talk to my commanding officer. This is wrong." That's when Vance saw Elise standing near the NCIS vehicle at the curb. Their eyes met across 30 feet of suburban driveway. Recognition didn't come immediately. Why would it? Elise was just another agent, another face in the arrest team. But then Vance's expression shifted as memory connected. She'd seen this face before. At the memorial service, standing in the back, holding a tray. "You," Vance whispered. "You were at the service. You were serving refreshments." Elise stepped forward into the morning light. "I was, and I heard your speech about honoring the fallen. About duty and sacrifice. It was a beautiful speech, Commander." Vance's face went pale. "Who are you?" "Chief Warrant Officer Elise Morgan, DevGru Unit 7, one of the fallen you eulogized." Elise's voice remained calm, factual. "Except I didn't fall. I watched, I documented, I waited. And now, Commander, you're going to answer for every piece of intelligence you sold, every supply schedule you leaked, every operator you put at risk because money mattered more than lives. The NCIS agent began guiding Vance toward the vehicle, but she resisted, twisting to keep eye contact with Elise. I didn't kill anyone. I just provided logistics information, supply chains, nothing operational. Supply chains reveal force deployment patterns. Deployment patterns reveal operational timelines. Operational timelines get people killed. Elise took another step closer. Petty Officer Davis died in Yemen because the enemy knew exactly when and where we'd be. You helped give them that information. His wife was pregnant. His son is 2 years old now. He'll never meet his father because you needed money. Vance's legs buckled slightly, and the agent caught her before she fell. Tears streamed down her face now, the reality finally penetrating denial. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. You didn't think about consequences. None of you did. You saw money and opportunity and convinced yourselves it didn't matter. But it did. It does. And now you'll live with that understanding for the next 20 years in Leavenworth. The agent loaded Vance into the vehicle. Through the tinted window, Elise could see her sobbing, head bowed, the weight of accountability crushing whatever rationalizations had sustained her for 5 years. The vehicle pulled away, carrying another traitor to justice. Wade appeared at Elise's shoulder. She hadn't heard him approach. That's 2 down. Cross and Huang are being arrested simultaneously at Camp Pendleton and Fort Meade. All 3 operations are green. Good. Elise watched the taillights disappear around the corner. How long until the trials? Months. Maybe a year. Military legal proceedings move slowly when they involve classified material. But they'll all face courts-martial. They'll all serve time. The Navy doesn't forgive treason. Elise nodded, feeling something settle in her chest. Not satisfaction. That word implied pleasure, and there was no pleasure in this. But resolution. Completion. The mission she'd started 3 years ago was finally finished. 4 traitors identified, 4 arrests made, a network dismantled, justice served. Master Chief, I'm shipping out in 3 days. New assignment, deep cover, could be 5 years. Wade's weathered face showed no surprise. Option 3 then. I figured you'd pick that one. How'd you know? Because you're not the kind of operator who walks away when there's still work to be done. You'll keep hunting until the whole network is gone. That's not criticism, Chief, that's respect. He clapped her shoulder once, the gesture carrying decades of shared understanding between people who'd chosen the hardest paths. Stay safe out there, and remember, being invisible doesn't mean being alone. Your team knows what you're doing. We'll be waiting when you come back. If I come back. When, Chief? When you come back. Defeatist thinking gets operators killed. You taught me that 3 years ago when you chose to survive instead of quit. Elise smiled despite herself. I don't remember teaching you anything, Master Chief. You did it by example, invisibility, patience, discipline when no one was watching. Those are lessons this community needed to learn. Wade gestured toward the street where Vance's vehicle had disappeared. Now we know what real dedication looks like. Now we understand that strength isn't noise. It's quiet competence sustained across years. You changed how we see things, Chief. That's a legacy. They stood together in the early morning quiet, 2 operators who understood how precious loyalty was. The sun climbed higher, burning off coastal fog, illuminating a neighborhood that would gossip about the arrest for weeks without knowing the full story. Elise turned to leave, but Wade called after her. Chief, one more thing. She looked back. When Phase 2 is over, when you finally come back, don't forget how to be visible. We need operators like you present, not hidden. Elise nodded once and walked toward her vehicle. 3 more days before she disappeared again, this time into the private sector where the rules were different and the stakes were higher. But she wasn't afraid. She'd survived 3 years of invisibility and emerged stronger. She could do it again. 72 hours later, she stood in Admiral Greer's office one final time. Her hair was shoulder-length now, dyed lighter. Her clothing was civilian professional, slacks and blazer. Her identification document sat on Greer's desk. Driver's license, passport, credit history, employment records, all of it fake, all of it perfect. Your cover identity is Claire Sutton, former Army logistics officer, now freelance security consultant. Malcolm Reese actively recruits former military personnel. He'll reach out within 2 weeks. Greer slid the documents across the desk. Once you're inside, your objective is intelligence gathering only. No heroics. You document, report through secure channels, and wait for coordinated takedowns. Clear? Clear, sir. This operation requires patience on a scale that makes your last 3 years look like a weekend drill. You'll witness crimes you can't stop. You'll build relationships with targets you'll eventually help arrest. That psychological load is heavier than combat. Are you prepared? Elise thought about 3 years of serving coffee while hearing herself called a traitor. 3 years of watching Ryan Locke function normally while knowing he'd killed 4 men. Sir, I'm prepared. Greer studied her face, looking for cracks, for doubt. He found none. Finally, he stood and extended his hand. Good luck, Chief Morgan. And remember, no matter how deep you go, the Navy hasn't forgotten you. We'll be watching. We'll be ready. She shook his hand firmly. I know, sir. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm sending you into hell. Just promise me you'll survive it. I survived Yemen. I survived 3 years undercover. I'll survive this. Her voice carried absolute conviction, because people like Davis deserve better than a system that tolerates traitors. She left the office, walked through Norfolk corridors one final time, and climbed into a civilian vehicle. Behind her, she left the Navy Cross in secure storage, classified, invisible, waiting. Ahead lay 5 years, maybe more, of infiltrating a network that profited from betrayal. As the vehicle carried her past the security checkpoint into civilian traffic, Elise felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Purpose without pretense. She wasn't hiding anymore, she was hunting. On the war room screen back at Norfolk, a classified file updated, Operation Quiet Honor, Phase 2 initiated. Below it, Malcolm Reese's photograph appeared, designated target principal. At the bottom, a single line, operator deployed, timeline 60 months, status active. Admiral Greer stood alone staring at that screen. 5 years, a lifetime of invisibility for one operator who'd already given 3. But if anyone could succeed, it was Elise Morgan. He touched the screen once, respect and farewell. Then he secured the room and walked out, leaving the display glowing in darkness. Somewhere in Virginia, Claire Sutton checked into a modest apartment and began memorizing her new life. And far away in Djibouti, hostile forces had no idea their intelligence network was being dismantled, one invisible operator at a time. Justice wasn't loud, it was patient, and the Navy's most patient operator had just gone hunting again.
Every soldier carries a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to MVB Story for more.